Hey everyone, Kyle once again, and welcome back to the next movie review, and viewing a classic comedy film that I grew up enjoying. It's definitely one of my favorite Robin Williams movies, and every time I watch Robin Williams on screen, it's always such a joy to watch him. It's always just shows how much I miss the guy, right? I said before about Robin Williams over the time, how he was such a one of a kind comedian, and just how he just always just it's just a joy just to watch him, I just do all these informations he improvisate I can't even say the word properly. Improvise stuff he always does, and I miss Robin Williams. So, and I got to finally review one of this film that I grew up watching. That's why it's one of my favorite ones. And so the viewing of the classic 1993 comedy film Mrs. Doubtfire. And really quick though, I'm not big on this DVD cover. Looks generic, I mean, could have have one from the poster and stuff, Just I'm not a fan of this cover though, but as I said about Rob Williams, it was just it always saddens me every time I watch him on any film. It's just sadly he's gone from us, But the thing is though, you just never know behind the scenes, You just never know how he was that depressed, and then eventually, he just sadly hung himself, Just if you're that depressed, sometimes, well, guess not getting help is probably not enough though. But I've been depressed though. But sometimes I say I can't do certain things on video because. For certain videos because I had personal problems, and that depresses me. I just need to be in the right mood, because when I get depressed, I just feel like I just don't do any of that stuff, But I just won't hate myself over it though. But yeah, there was a lot more deeper meaning to it though. So, but regardless though, we all miss Robin Williams, and just he was like I said before, he was just a one of a kind comedian, So you just won't get that nowadays. But regardless, though, I enjoy Mrs. Doubtfire. So Mrs. Doubtfire from 1993, and directed by Chris Columbus, who debuted by directing Adventures of Babysitting. He did Only the Lonely. That was with John Candy. Of course, this film he was going to do the first two Harry Potter movies, The Sorcerer's Stone and The Chamber of Secrets. The first Percy Jackson film, the Lightning Thief, and then so that crappy Adam Sandler film, Pixels. I mean, cool idea though, but just turned into another unfunny Adam Sandler movie. And of course, he was also the executive producer on The Goonies. He worked with. Of course, how people forget, of course, Chris Columbus, the first two Home Alone movies. So, I enjoy Chris Columbus as a director. I love Home Alone 1 and 2. I enjoy this film. Adventures of Babysitting. The first two Harry Potter films I like. I think the first one I do like, and then although overall I'm not big on the whole franchise though, but I do like some of the Harry Potter films, but I think I do remember I liking the first one. Second film, I think I did mind. But I have to rewatch that one, Chamber of Secrets. But yeah, Chris Columbus, he's a good director. But besides some hit and misses though. And the film did fairly well. It did very well at the box office. It grossed over $400 million worldwide, and it was the second highest grossing film of 1993, behind Jurassic Park. Of course, Jurassic Park was the biggest film of that year. So this film made the second most money of 1993 behind Jurassic Park. And of course, if it was, and of course, the third what was the third film in 1993? That was The Fugitive, with Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones. So the top three films in 1993 was Jurassic Park, Mrs. Doubtfire, and then The Fugitive. But and I thought that also with a very decent cast, because of course Robin Williams as Daniel Hillard, but then you got Sally Field, who plays his ex, who also did a good job in this film. You got Pierce Brosnan, James Bond, before a couple years before he did James Bond in GoldenEye. They got Harvey Fierstein, who later starred in Independence Day, and then of course he voiced in what was his name in Mulan. And what other film he did though, but I forget though. But of course, Harvey Fierstein, but in this film he plays Robin Williams' brother. I like Harvey Fierstein. I think he doesn't do much nowadays, sadly. Then you got Robert Prosky, who plays this network boss that Pete, who's taken into liking to Robin Williams, wants to hire him. Robert Prosky, of course, in the same year, 1993, before this, he starred in Last Action Hero, which I always find Arnold Schwarzenegger's most underrated movies. I love Last Action Hero, another childhood film I grew up with. Rob Prosky in that film, he was Nick. He was the kid Danny always went to. He's the one who gives him the golden ticket. Yeah, not the golden ticket to Willy Wonka, but the golden ticket, the magical golden ticket. So he was in that. And of course, I also remember he was also in John Carpenter's Christine. He was Keith Gordon's boss, who would get crushed in Christine when he was sitting inside the car. And he was also in Detox, or AKA ICU, with Sylvester Stallone. Pretty much the only horror film that Stallone stars in. Prosky. And the kids, of course, the youngest is Mara Wilson, later starring Matilda, and the 90s remake of Miracle on 34th Street, and then years later, her last film she did was the Thomas the Tank movie, Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Then the older daughter, the oldest daughter, Lisa Jacob, which I can't believe it took me this long to figure out that she was also she would later play Randy Quaid's daughter in Independence Day. I completely did not know that until up until recently. I'm like, really? That was her from Mrs. Doubtfire? The older daughter? I'm like, I feel dumbfounded just by how it took me this long to figure out, Dumbfounds me. But yeah, she, so later starred in Independence Day. And then, Matthew Lawrence, who plays the middle son, the middle child, the other son, Chris, and then you got Mara Wilson, yeah. I thought the kids did a good job as well. And so we all if all the years people know what the premises of Mrs. Doubtfire is, right? But I think that the dynamic between Robin Williams and Sally Field, okay. But I'll just go through it anyway. But Robin Williams, he's a voice actor. And with the opening of the film, we see this cartoon, kind of like in the vein of Tweety and Sylvester, right? And we see, and he's doing the voice, right? And we see, which, I don't know the cartoons nowadays, when you see this bird smoking a cigar, right? Which I'm like, how cartoons nowadays, they probably get canceled because of that. Oh, smoking is bad. Yeah. I mean, they did it back then with the Looney Tunes, so that's probably why. But he goes against the script, saying how cigars are bad, right? That's not a good message for the kids. So he goes against the lines, and he quits. He's unemployed. And with Robin Williams' character, he's always the thing is, he's which kind of fits how he is in real life, but he's always joking, right? Not really taking things seriously, like how his son is having it's his son's birthday, so he blows it on a big birthday party for him by hiring a petting zoo. So when Sally Field gets there, she's pretty much had it with him. Because she's the one who's always serious. She was serious, and he was always joking. There's got to be have a balance between. There's times to be joking or silly, but times to take things seriously, right? So this is the final straw for Sally Field. So she wants a divorce, and it's not like Sally Field is happy about getting divorced. It's not like she's rubbing it in his face. Oh, ha ha ha, No, she's not. She's not happy about going through this either, though. But what choices does she have, right? And then, before that, though, like the son, Matthew Lawrence, kind of blames himself for this, but he's like, no, don't blame. Robin Williams is like, no, don't blame yourself. This is my fault, right? So it's like, the kids love their father, right? So he may have been a not so good husband, but he has been a loving father, so the kids love their father, but just not as a good husband though. So that's one of the reasons why Sally Field would divorce him, but like I said, she's not happy about doing this either though. She has no choice though. What choice does she have, right? And then you get that kind of like gut wrenching moment is like is like when they says like, do we still love each other? And he's like, do we? And then she goes and says, I want a divorce. And of course that's when the kids are hearing this, and that kind of like put their kids in that position, right? How would you feel, right? And so, which that kind of gets me sometimes, because that kind of stuff depresses me, Now, no. And for guys like, no, my parents are not yet though, but because we do, of course, like I said, I put myself in their shoes, right? Because some of the personal stuff, some of the personal stuff that I have when I say that I don't want to talk about, it's regarding about my parents. Because that depresses me as shit, right? That's whenever I say the personal problems I don't want to talk about. That's usually the case I have with my parents. But it hasn't gone that far yet, though. That I will not talk about though, but it hasn't gone that far yet. If just see, that's the thing. It just depresses me just talking about it, So that's why I do understand from the perspective of the kids, right? So after that, he gets an apartment, and he has to find a suitable job. And it comes by the time for the kids to leave, you do get some of that moments of Robin Williams, being serious, he says, you're my damn kids too. So you get some of that serious moments with Robin Williams. I mean, he can do outside of his comedic roles, he can do serious roles. For example, he did a good job as playing this killer in Insomnia from Christopher Nolan with Al Pacino, Hilary Swank. He plays a killer. He did a good job in that movie, stepping outside his comedic zone. Or when he played a creepy stalker, stalking his family in 1 Hour Photo. He did a good job in that movie. He can do stuff outside his just being a comedian all the time. He could be a killer, and he could be a creepy stalker as well. Just go watch Insomnia or 1 Hour Photo. He can do dramatic stuff, let alone horror vibe stuff like those movies. So So he does find a secure job. He also wants to see his kids too. So what he hears about when that Sally Field is advertising for a housekeeper, he sees that opportunity, and you see kind of like, he does, he pretends to be all these people who are calling rides, all these voices, until finally when he does a voice where he portrays of Mrs. Doubtfire, And so he goes to his brother, Harvey Fierstein, who's gay in the movie. He has a husband. But he is a makeup artist, right? He does like all this stuff like makeup and stuff, right? So he wants to make Robin Williams into a woman. So you have this trend of montages of him going through different face looks, and until the what's the song playing? What be a lady tonight? Until we get him as the famous look of Mrs. Doubtfire. And then he goes to meet as Mrs. Doubtfire, meet the kids and Sally Field. And then finally when he goes back to his place, what's the woman's name? I've seen her before in other films. Polly Holiday as I think it was her name. No. Sorry. That's the wrong person. Mrs. Silner, that's the name, and played by Anne Haney. I've seen her before in other films too. She's the one who's kind of like overseeing him, like make sure he has a job, and then of course, his place, right? So she's like kind of like overseeing him, make sure he's living up to the agreement of the divorce, right? So he's living up to the agreements. And then he's changing back and forth between Mrs. Doubtfire and himself, right? And when he tries to change back again, he sees these two kids across the street just watching him, laughing at him, putting on the stuff, right? And then when he drops the face on the street, when he puts it away, he's like I'm Norman Bates. And then he sees the mask gets run over by the garbage truck, and he's like, "Oh shit!" That always made me like, just his reaction when he says that. He's like, "Oh shit!" And so he had to sneak into the kitchen so to avoid being seen by Mrs. Silner. And of course, the famous scene where he puts his fake in the cake and goes with the frosting over his face, like, "Hello!" Of course, that's the famous scene that people remember that scene from Mrs. Doubtfire. Hello! And then when you making the tea and the frosting drips into the tea, it's like, "Oh, now you get your cream and your sugar." So it just brings a smile to my face every time I see Robin Williams. It just being like that, it just brings a smile to my face, It's just sad, it's just this year, I can't believe it's been 11 years now. Going on 11 years, because he passed away in August 2014, so it's going to be going on 11 years. Jeez, man. It's been that long already. So, and then while it's going on, Sally Field, he's seeing this other guy named Stu, played by Pierce Brosnan. Now, a lot of people tend to think like, that Stu, Pierce Brosnan, he's just this asshole guy. When you think about it, turns out he really is not. He's actually a really nice guy. He's nice to Sally Field, treats her well. He's great. He's nice, fun with the kids, and Pierce Brosnan's character is really not a bad guy if you think about it. People just say, "Oh, he's just trying to replace him." Like, he's not an asshole in any way. He's genuinely a really nice guy. He didn't except for the one scene where they're at the pool, right? And he's talking to this one guy about Sally Field's ex, and he's saying, "Well, the guy's a loser." Well, if you think about it from his perspective, right? Probably Sally Field told him about her ex, right? Of course, you probably would think that because like okay, the ex he was fired, he was unemployed, right? Always like being silly and joking. I was like, of course you would think that being an irresponsible person, right? Of course you probably would think that he would be a loser. So I understand his perspective, right? So, but overall he wasn't just a total asshole in any way. He was really just a nice guy, which he understood why he would think that the her ex-husband would be a loser. Because you just think of it from his perspective. So, but yeah, I think Pierce Brosnan did a good job as well, and just like I said, he was a nice guy. He wasn't a dick in any way. I don't know why people think that he's such a dick. He really is not. He was just he's a really nice guy, and he like I said, he is nice to Sally Field. He treats her well, and he likes the kids. Like he said, he was like, well. When he was talking to the guy again at one of the pools, right? He's like, you wouldn't date anybody who has kids. Well, three terrific kids, and I'm crazy about them. Does that sound like an asshole in any way? No. He really likes her kids, so. But anyway, that's what that she's going out with, and that kind of that bothers Robin Williams. Her seeing somebody else. And then you get this little montage of doing the housework, and before that, of course the famous scene where when on the first day on the job, right, where the kids they're not obeying, right, they do their homework, and he tosses the remote into the fish tank. He's like, the only thing you're gonna be watching is Deep CNN, and punish them by cleaning, but they don't want to do that, so they do the homework instead. And then when he tries to cook the dinner, it's a mess, right? Of course, he leans forward into the stove, and the sugar catches fire, and he's like, "Ah!" And of course, this famous scene where he says, "Look at me, the first day as a woman, and Martin getting hot flashes." And so he orders from this fancy restaurant, and by the time Sally Field comes home, it's like, "Oh wow, this place is clean." And then the dinner table. How she's just amazed at how she cooked it. Yeah. And so the daughter comes out to apologize, and then that's we get the montage of him with the kids, and then while Aerosmith's "Dude Looks Like a Lady" is playing. Dude looks like a lady. I haven't heard that song in years. Only when I hear it in this movie, I hardly ever hear that song playing on the radio pretty much anymore. I hear, like, Sweet Emotion from Aerosmith and Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Probably because from the film Armageddon, though, but I like Aerosmith. That's a good, Steven Tyler and the rest of the band. I like Aerosmith. Those two songs, like I mentioned, or Back in the Saddle, and, of course, this song, Dude Looks Like a Lady. But I just don't hear that. I just haven't heard that song in ages, though, except when I'm watching this movie. Dude looks like a lady. And we see over time he's getting better at cooking and cleaning. And the more where there's in the moment where we sees he's out looking out the window, he sees Sally Field with Pierce Brosnan. He waves hi, and then he's his wife hi back. But as soon as he turns his back, he gives him the middle finger. And so that's when they get to the pool, and he's getting bothered by him getting close with his kids, and that's where he says he overhears he's listening on Pierce Brosnan to this guy, like I said. Well, he's like, well, I'm pushing 40. I can't remain a bachelor forever. and he's like, well, you wouldn't date a guy who has kids. Well, he's just three terrific kids, and I'm crazy about them. And what about their father? What do you think he'd be for all this? Well, let's face it, man. The guy's a loser. So, like I said, understand it from his perspective, like I said. And then Ramos gets pissed. He throws a fruit at Pierce Brosnan. He's like, oh, someone else threw it and ran away, and all stuff. And then afterwards, later, that's where the son catches Robin Williams, pissing in the toilet, and so the daughter and the son, or it's like, well, the son says no shit, and then Robin Williams goes and says in his voice, "Watch your mouth, young man." And they say that it's their dad, so Tua tells them to keep quiet about this. Don't let their mom find out. And so, and then at the back of the studio where he's working at, this really crappy host who's teaching about dinosaurs, who's doing such a shit job at describing dinosaurs. I'm like, everyone working behind the camera, they're all falling asleep. They're all just so bored of this guy. I mean, we see the cameraman, he starts falling asleep. One of the chairs like this, starting to fall asleep. So the guy's just doing such a boring job. And so later when Robin Williams, he does his own version on the dinosaurs, and Robert Prosky, who's, like I said, from Christine and Last Action Hero, he sees Robin Williams doing the whole thing much better, right? And he likes what he's doing, right, with the whole voicing and the whatever, and then offers him an opportunity, of a dinner at this restaurant at 7:00 next Friday. And so, but then he learns that Sally Field, her birthday. They said the reservation at the same restaurant on the same night. So that's we get the whole thing where when they get to the restaurant, he's going back and forth, right, between the tables. Changing in and out, and so when whereas there were Southfield, Pierce Brosnan, where they're sitting, right, and we look at the dentures in the glass, and they're all looking at Sally Field and Pierce Brosnan's faces are like, their faces like, and the two kids, the son and daughter, they're looking and like, because since they know it's their dad, they're kind of like laughing. Or when he missteps the chair, and falls downwards because he missed the chair too. And then he's going to talk with Robert Prosky, and then since he's been drinking a little bit, he goes to the wrong table to Robert Prosky wearing the outfit. It's like, Daniel, is that you? And he's like, surprise. He's like, this is your new idea. And then Robin Williams, he does some put the peppers in Pierce Brosnan's dish because he's allergic to pepper. He takes a bite of it and he's choking, and he sees it and he's like, oh god, I killed the bastard. Help is on the way! And gives him the Heimlich, and he falls down, and then the mask kind of gets ruined. It's not ruined, though, it just goes off his face a bit, and that's when he got caught. But Pierce Brosnan, why I say he's not really... once again, it shows he's not really an asshole, because after that, he thanks Robin Williams for helping him, and they both shake hands. So... And then after, you don't see Pierce Brosnan after that. It's kind of a weird thing. Like, you don't see Pierce Brosnan after that, I mean, even after the custody again, and the show afterwards, you don't see him with Sally Field after that, I just wonder why. I mean, like they said, they shook hands, so I don't know. But I just always wonder about that. So then afterwards, of course, now back at the with the judge, right? He now has ordered now Robin Williams. He can only see his kids now under supervision. So someone has to constantly watch him while he's with his kids. I'm like, damn, how comfortable that would be. I'm like, jeez. And once again, like Sally Field, she's not happy about it either. Though she's not like laughing, rubbing her, like I said. Just like she just doesn't like what she doesn't like what she has. But what choice does she have? But on the flip side, though, afterwards. Ron Williams has now a hit on his own TV show, betraying Mrs. Doubtfire on TV. So the show is a hit. As on the flip side, though, and then after Sally Field goes to see him after the show, and the kids, they say how the kids are able to, they watch you all every day, and it's like, well, at least they get to see me every day. So, and then they're trying to find another new housekeeper, but or they find and then to watch the kids, and then turns out like Sally Fields kind of like talked to the courts and stuff, right, and about the whole supervision. So now that they can see, the dad can see them every day for about 3 hours after work or after school and all that stuff. So now I don't know how custody legal stuff that I'm nothing on the whole legal system on custody battles and stuff like that. Just how she talked to the courts and about the whole removing the whole supervision thing. So I am no expert on that. I don't know jack shit about how custody battles work. So, but at least they're happy to see that they go on they see their dad. And they go on the drive. Oh, by the way, this takes place in San Francisco. By the way, San Francisco. just watching how San Francisco was in this movie. Just now, how much of a shithole it is now. And I've been in San Francisco plenty of times, and it's a cesspool. That's how I'll put it. San Francisco is just a cesspool. That's what it is. God, I mean, it's definitely not how it was 30 or so years ago. Well, that's what happens when you live in California, you know. But anyway, so. And then it's with Sally Field listening to another program on Ron Williams on his show, you know, talking about because how a kid sent him a letter, how his parents got divorced, and saying etc. Like, how is it my fault? It's like, oh no, dude, it's not your fault. Just because they don't love each other doesn't mean that doesn't mean they still love you. So yeah, Mrs. Doubtfire. I mean, just Ron Williams, like I said. From his just improving on lines back when he started on Mork and Mindy, from when he first appeared on Happy Days as the alien Mork, and then the show Mork and Mindy, and then of course when Good Morning Vietnam, or I did say Patch Adams because I reviewed Patch Adams. Which I wasn't really big on the movie. It just makes me think. Just makes how what the Patch Adams portrayed in that is like comes off like some not right stuff that he did in the movie. Like I said, so I wasn't big on Patch Adams, or Bicentennial Man, Flubber. I like though. I think I still do. I still don't mind it. Of course, Aladdin as the voice of Genie, where he did pretty much a lot of his own lines, a lot of it. Always enjoy Aladdin just because one of the main reasons is Robin Williams. At least it came back for the third direct-to-video sequel, The King of Thieves. Not Return of Jafar, but The King of Thieves he came back for. Yeah, just like and of course portraying President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt in the Night at the Museum movies, the last one he did, the third film. Death to Smoochie, I was not a fan of. But even though Ron Williams, he had some misses though. Like I said, I didn't was Death to Smoochie, Patch Adams, and all that stuff. For me, in my opinion, but it's always still fun to see him. To see how much I still miss the guy. I still think he still did a good job as portraying Mrs. Doubtfire, and also the thing is, because the whole thing about for a divorce between husband and wife, like there are times to be joking, there are times to be serious, right? I mean, he may not have been as good as a husband, but at least his kids loved him. A good father, but not a good husband, though. But until later, when he takes on the role of Mrs. Doubtfire, when he was doing things seriously, right? He did better with himself. His apartment was clean. He was doing his own cooking. So portraying Mrs. Doubtfire did kind of help himself. He helped himself by being Mrs. Doubtfire. And like I said about what was it? I forgot what I say now. But it was always such a joy to see Robin Williams. I mean, and Sally Field. I think Sally Field also did a good job as well. Pierce Brosnan, he was good too. I mean, like I said before, he wasn't a dick like some people say though, but he was actually a nice guy. Yeah, listen, he wasn't mean in any way. He was a genuine nice guy, like I said. When he said the guy's a loser, I mean, just think about what his perspective is, you know. So, and then I think Robert Prosky, he passed away years ago, so yeah. But he was still good as well because I liked him in Last Action Hero and it was like John Carpenter's Christine or in Detox, aka ICU. I thought the kids did a good job as well. Matthew Lawrence, Lisa Jacob, and of course Mara Wilson. It was nice to see Harvey Fierstein in there. I wish he would have had more screen time. He only appears in like 3 scenes, like after when he was getting divorced, and then after when he was doing the makeup on him, and then afterwards when he returned the damaged face to give him another one. Why wasn't I an only child? And that was it, you know. I wish I could have seen more of Harvey Fierstein, you know. I like him, you know. So I think that's probably one of the only nitpicks I have. I just wish I could have seen more of Harvey Fierstein. And after the whole transformation is complete, right? And Robin was like, "Are we close?" And then Harvey was like, "If we were any closer, then you'd be mom." So, yeah, but I think that's the only nitpick I have was this scene. I just wish I could have more of Harvey Fierstein. But Robin Williams, when the jokes are there, it's funny. You know, like the whole frosting on the face. You know, hello, or getting hot flashes. You know, the classic lines that people remember from this movie. But it does have a good heart to it as well. Like I said, the whole thing about the custody battle and all that stuff. It does have a good heart to it. It does kind of make you feel emotional. Like I said, I sympathize with the kids, right? Because I see myself in that situation as well. Like I said, it's depressing as shit for me, you know. And no, my parents are not right now. So that's just one of the issues I just hate talking about. Like I said, if I'm dealing with personal stuff, it's regardless of what's going on with my parents. That's why a lot of times say I don't feel like doing this because I have personal issues. I don't want to talk about it. That's some of the reason why I just don't get too details about it. I don't explain my personal problems outside the camera here. But that dealing with that fits the situation in this movie for me though. That's why I feel myself like the kids. So. But regardless, though, I still enjoy Mrs. Doubtfire. It's still a classic. It's definitely one of my top lists of top 5 Robin Williams movies. Miss the guy dearly. Such a great shame. Always a joy to see him on screen. Never a moment with him that puts a smile on my face. So yeah, that's my review for Mrs. Doubtfire. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next movie review. We'll see you next time. Later.